Did you know that cigarette companies used to have doctors endorse their products?
Once again, the brand named most was Camel. According to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
Advertising from the 50s and earlier is fascinating. They told entire stories in their ad copy, and they invented all kinds of terms that nobody had heard of. I mean, T-zones? When was the last time a doctor asked how your T-zone was working? Whenever a salesperson tries to sell you something, they're always going to use some careful language to exaggerate the benefits of something and maybe downplay the negatives. But people who know that what they're selling is absolute crap, they rely on the theatrics, the razzle-dazzle, the smoke and mirrors, the deceptive language that completely tries to fool you into believing something that just isn't true.
There's the truth and the truth.
It's awfully small.
I'd say it's awfully cozy.
That's dilapidated.
Rustic.
That house is on fire.
Motivated seller.
But there is a point where it goes past aggressive marketing and becomes a con, a fraud, a grift, a scam. That's what Mark Carney's doing with his carbon tax con.
Will axe the consumer carbon tax. Make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
The con that Mark Carney's trying to pull off is he's trying to convince you that something has changed because they've swapped out leaders, they've changed the letterhead, and somehow the Liberal government is going to be something that it simply is not. First of all, Mark Carney has fought in favor of the carbon tax for his whole adult life. He's written books about it. He's traveled around the world trying to convince other governments to adopt the carbon tax. The only time he's ever criticized Justin Trudeau was when he said that the carbon tax was set far too low.
Now, so far, carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low.
Even as he was taking over the Liberal Party, he told Canadians that he wasn't actually going to get rid of it. He was going to hide it, call it a shadow carbon tax, and hope that you didn't notice it. This is actually the carbon tax. This is what the carbon tax actually is. It's a complex piece of legislation that imposes a carbon tax system on provinces that don't have their own backstop. It was passed by Parliament. The only way to get rid of it is to repeal it. But did Mark Carney recall Parliament and actually take the carbon tax off the books? No, he didn't. Now here's where the marketing scam comes in, because he knows that he's got a massive record of loving the carbon tax and defending and promoting it. So how does he fool Canadians into thinking that somehow he no longer does? Well, out comes the theatrics, the performative art, the razzle-dazzle, and the smoke and mirrors. He starts off with a phony order in council. He had a performance in his office and tries to do his best Donald Trump impression by signing an executive order. This is just a phony marketing tactic. That piece of paper means nothing. It has no legal effect. The carbon tax law still exists. The way the regulations are changed is actually through the Governor General, but that wouldn't make for a good photo op, so that's not what they did. The carbon tax law is still on the books. It's actually still up on the Liberal Party website. And Liberal cabinet ministers are still saying that they believe in the carbon tax and they don't expect anything to change under Mark Carney.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of fundamental changes. I'm still a believer in the consumer carbon price.
Deep down, the Liberals still believe in this. Here's how I know. They haven't gotten rid of it. The carbon tax still today is applied to all kinds of things in Canada that you end up paying for. It still applies to steel, aluminum, manufacturing, all kinds of industries where those costs get passed on to consumers, or worse yet, Canadian businesses move their investments out of our country. The Liberal play is to try to trick Canadians into believing that they've gotten rid of half of it. Here's the thing. When everybody finally realized that smoking was bad for you, the advice didn't change to smoke half as much. Doctors didn't come out and say, only smoke the first half of the cigarette. When the world realized that asbestos causes cancer, the building codes didn't change to force builders to use half as much asbestos. It was banned altogether. The carbon tax is bad. It punishes consumers, but it also punishes workers. It threatens jobs. It drives up the costs of everything you buy. Mark Carney has been caught out in multiple lies just in the last few weeks alone.
Biggest supplier of fertilizer, biggest supplier of aluminum, biggest supplier of semiconductors. We supply almost all their semiconductors. That whole, everybody in the White House is a tech bro except for Trump.
He has no credibility. This isn't just aggressive marketing and embellishing features. This is a massive con. Mark Carney started this when he launched his leadership campaign. He realized that he had to fool Canadians into believing that he no longer believed in the carbon tax, even though he spent his entire life fighting for it. There is only one way to kill the carbon tax once and for all. Pierre Poilievre and the Common Sense Conservatives will not just make sure that the consumer carbon tax is gone forever, but we will also unburden our manufacturers, our steel workers, our auto workers, our aluminum workers by taking the industrial carbon tax off too. That's the way we make our economy stronger so that we can fight back against the unfair threats from the US. That's how we put Canada first. That's how we bring home a better Canada for all of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well said. Well put.